I think your work in algorithmic fairness, which is the language I use to refer to some of the sort of prediction tools you're talking about, transgender folks of color look at provide a very interesting lens into how those tools can propagate biases. Tony Petit and some other folks, we did a paper looking at how the most common calculator for atherosclerotic risk factors and cardiovascular risk work differently. It includes both race and biological sex, but it gets at the precision question. What do you mean by sex? How are you operationalizing sex? If you're looking at the hormonal profile, a trans woman would be the female. If you're looking at sex assigned at birth, none of those things were ever operationalized explicitly for those calculators. And so depending on the interpretation, they could be between 10 to 40% off based on our findings. And so my point gets to some of what your work is saying is that it's interesting. I don't see science can be so sloppy around sex because it's taken as a fact when it's actually something that is very variable. And so people don't bother to operationalize it because, as you say, that people don't challenge the biology. They take it as a fact and don't look at the nuances on it. So I really appreciate that you're diving into this deeply, particularly on this new horizon of algorithms and risk prediction. And I think that you are apt in talking about AI specifically, because I think what's unique about the race corrections and the atherosclerotic risk factors, those are equations. You can look at them. You can say, oh, there's a sex variable, there's a race variable. But what happens with AI and some of these more black box models is that you don't really get to look under the hood. You can't write out the formula for them. You can't see how race is being at play. And this sometimes is a variable in there, but sometimes it's cryptically associated with a bunch of different things. Like sex is cryptically associated with all these other things, like how often you get seen by specific physicians. Like somebody who is a trans man might not be seen by OB-GYN as much as a cis woman, and that could be incorporated in the algorithm based on just how frequently they show up in your data. And so I think it's really important for us to interrogate how we think about sex and bringing back rigor to it, thinking about its biological variation so that these algorithms can be equitable. And so I'm really excited about some of your work.
Thank you, Elle. Can I just jump in? I hope you'll share the link
Oh,
to that
please.
paper.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
I think I'm very excited to hear about that. And I just keep hearing about how many people are working in this space and doing this vital work. And we can all learn from it because it is, as you said, it's like opening up the black box. What happens when we look inside and see what assumptions are there? And as you pointed out, um, an algorithm could work for someone, but why does it work? Is it because of biology? Or is it because what you're capturing is a history of bias in the clinic or a history of deprivations? When it works for someone, that is, it's somewhat accurate in predicting risk. A worry is that we get an inference from that it's because of some quality of the person, some aspect of
Mm.
their essence, their biology, some innate factor, rather than fixing the structural issue. It treats bodies as transhistorical and acontextual. When for these algorithms to be accurately understood and fairly applied, we need to have on board an understanding of the many factors that could be driving why they work, so to say.
It's so interesting because I think we're talking at the like perfect intersection of our two disciplines and really speaking about how transdisciplinary work is important because as a statistician epidemiologist, I am cautious about training people that you cannot interpret even if a prediction is good, the numbers, the math doesn't tell you why that prediction is good. The variables you include, unless you understand how those variables show up, the data generating mechanism, which is our society, which is our histories, which is the world we live in, that is what tells you it can get you towards causation. And so just because it's strongly associated race, if you start to value assessments of people or their races, that's what you get. That's fraud. And that's what you're saying here. And it's the same conclusion, just using different language behind it. And so that's really, really powerful, I think.